Welcome to the Kindred Journey podcast, the podcast where women share their experiences of stepping into courage when comfort is no longer an option. This is the podcast for connecting in community with women who have been shaped by the liberating to challenging seasons that life endures. I am your host, Leslie. I am a wife, mother, daughter, sister, and friend. I too have experienced these seasons in life, and I want you to know that you are surrounded by a community of courageous, real women here for you. I can't wait to connect, so grab your favorite beverage and join me on this kindred journey. This episode was a special one to record. It was not only one of my first podcast interviews I recorded, but it was an in-person interview with my sister Heather. I would have to admit some of my courage to start this podcast was influenced by my older sister and watching her experience several moments in courage throughout her life. In this episode, Heather shares her experiences that brought moments of nostalgia, challenges, teachable moments, and how to sit with the emotion of disappointment. She expresses how not only rural living was calling her home, but her role as a teacher will always be pulling at her in one way or another, whether it is in the classroom or on the yoga mat. After opening a yoga studio while taking a leave of absence from her teaching career, she steps into courage by overcoming the fear of failure. She also touches on that you have to ask. If you don't ask, the answer will always be no. She encourages us to keep our eyes open for all the things that are coming your way that you aren't expecting, and that sometimes we put blinders on when we have all these expectations. Please join me on this adventurous expedition with Homesteader Heather, the lifelong learner. Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm so glad we finally get to do this. This is so exciting. And I'm just honored to have not only you as my sister, but as one of my guests.
Well, I think this is just an amazing endeavor, and I'm excited for you.
And thank you. Thank you. Well, since I know plenty about you, how about you go ahead and introduce yourself and maybe share a little bit about yourself and some interesting things for everybody else to learn.
All right. Well, I'll start with my name. I'm Heather Clark, and I'm all the things like mother and daughter, sister and friend, cousin and aunt, pet owner, teacher, homesteader, and adventurer. Our other sister, Becky, she jokingly calls me Homesteader Heather.
I love that.
And currently I have some sourdough bread in the works. So, as a matter of fact, sourdough starter is one of the neediest pets that I own.
Well, it's delicious. I have had some fresh out of the oven, and I do enjoy that fresh bread. So
I do enjoy it too. That was an endeavor I started at the beginning of this year, 2023, and almost religiously every weekend I make sourdough bread, and it just out of interest. That's purely what it is, just for the fun and yumminess of it.
I love that. And I think creating something with your own hands as well feels so rewarding and gratifying, especially in this day and age where a lot of things come from a store, come from a package, and just to be able to make something from scratch, I'm sure feels just so fulfilling.
It does. It's like what we are provided with to be able to make something is it's just there for the taking, for the making, and capitalizing on that is just one of the things that kind of keeps me going with that, and back to the whole homesteading thing. I mean, that's not really how I see myself, but that is, I gardening and just making. We enjoy that.
Cultivating.
So, cultivating. But by trade, I am a teacher, and I've been teaching since 1999. I started in a 2-room schoolhouse, and that was outside of Polson, Montana. And I was taught about 12 kids, and they were from about 3rd to 6th grade. It was such a unique experience. And at the time, I had been offered a different position in a more traditional school. However, I just figured I'd never have that opportunity again. So I went for it and just loved it. I just love having to be able to be part of this experience of something nostalgic. And I think that's part of my personality is I can be very nostalgic. And um, so but after about 3 years teaching there, I was ready to grow as a teacher and looked for other opportunities. And at the time, Washoe County School District, which is Reno, Nevada, they were doing hiring bonuses, and it brought me a little bit closer to family. And so I applied and was granted an interview and just went for it, packed up, and was ready to move down to Reno. And just before I moved down, I got a call from Washoe County, and they're like, "Oh, we have a hiring freeze going on, so you don't need to come." And so I was like, "Okay, well, I'm gonna come anyways." And so took the U-Haul trailer down and bumps in the road along the way, but eventually they were hiring and I got a position there. And again, it was a great experience. Earned my master's degree from UNR and University of Nevada, Reno. Uh, got married, started a family. Both my kids were born there in Reno, and it was a great place to be. One of the hardest transitions going from Reno from Polson's a small town in rural Montana. And now I was in the biggest little city, and that took some adjustment. And I knew I always wanted to get back to rural life, just something that is what I enjoy.
It was calling you home.
It was calling me home, indeed.
Well, thank you for that intro. I love that. I didn't know a few things about your journey, and there was a lot of bits of courage in what you just shared. But before we do dive into the main part of this podcast, I'd like to share with you that this is a safe place for you to share your story, and it's your time to shine, and everything is respected and honored and sacred here. So I want you to be able to be your full authentic self for myself and the listeners as well. If you could share with us a season or moment in your life where you have stepped into courage when comfort was no longer an option.
Well, I think in my journey of teaching, it has been several moments along the way. Um, Again, after being in Reno for several years, I saw that there was a position open in my hometown, and I went for it and applied, and it meant leaving middle of the school year, and that was really hard for me. When I make a commitment to do something, I have a really hard time stepping away from that, like to a fault. And that's something that I grapple with constantly because I know that's not how everybody operates, and that's fine. Um, but it's every time I butt up against that, I feel disappointment, and I just have to kind of wrestle with that emotion and sometimes sit with it. I looked at a meme today and it was like, have tea with that emotion. And so I'm learning to do that, as we are all learning in this journey of life. But the pay was competitive. So again, I made that move, and was glad to be back in a rural setting, close to home, steps from where I grew up, close to my folks. And that was really important to me. And have taught here. Well, I had taught here for about 7 or 8 years. And then payroll said, "Oh, sorry, we're overpaying you. We're going to decrease your salary by about $10,000. And after everything I put into it, and this was post-COVID, trying to figure out teaching online and just like giving it my all, it was a knife in the heart. It was truly devastating. Um, and I thought there's no way they could do that to me. Reached out to the union. They were minimal help. And so I figured it out on my own. And the way I figured it out was to approach the school board and I asked for a leave of absence. And I wasn't sure they were going to grant that to me because a few years prior, I'd asked for a leave of absence to teach in Thailand, and that might be another podcast interview. However, this one is more focused on a different journey I took. And lo and behold, they granted me another year leave of absence. And I really learned from that is you have to ask. If you don't ask, the answer is no. And, people can tell you that all day long, but until you're in the middle of it and you're doing the asking, and again, facing that disappointment of hearing an answer you don't want to hear, you don't you don't really know how that's going to feel. So it felt really good to have the school board behind me, and there's so many reasons that I'm so happy to be part of the community, and that's one of them. So
That's beautiful. And to advocate for yourself, I think is so important. Like you say, you don't know until you know. And if you don't ask, the answer is always no. So what's the fear in taking that courage step forward and asking, because it could go yes, it could go no, it could go maybe. There could be so many possibilities of asking, but asking takes courage.
it does.
Because it's a chance of putting yourself out there and putting yourself becoming vulnerable and putting yourself out there to be rejected, and nobody wants to be rejected.
Right.
So
Yes.
I think that in itself, and where how you grew from that experience
Yes,
as
I took a
well.
lot away from that, and just uh and at first I thought this is it. I'm just gonna quit. I'm not gonna, this isn't the place for me. And talking to others, her other sister, she really encouraged me to be like, just ask for that year leave of absence. And so I'm like, okay, you're right. Let me ask. Let me see what the answer is. And so um
Maybe you could share with us a little bit about what that year of
right.
absence.
Yeah. So the original intent and purpose of that year leave of absence was to get these units that I needed for the reason for the whole situation with deducting my payroll. And so I did that. I earned those units, but I knew I needed something else to keep me busy during that time. I like to be doing things, and during COVID, I pursued a certification in teaching yoga, and it actually started with children's yoga, so that I could provide the students with something to help them navigate such a crazy time, and myself. It also did help with navigating the crazy time myself, and then that led to pursuing yoga teacher training and to be able to teach adults as well. So I had these trainings and I thought, let me put them to use. So I decided to open a yoga studio and Yana Yoga. And in the process of deciding, do I do this or not? What am I doing? Do I know what I'm doing? The question that kept coming into my mind is, what is holding you back? And the only answer I could come up with is the fear of failure. And I had to just realize that, it's okay if you fail. It really is okay if you fail. And so I accepted that and went forward with the yoga studio. And it was an amazing experience and a blessing beyond my imagination.
That's wonderful. That's so beautiful. And I think maybe you could share this story with our listeners that you had a client that came in and she shared with you that I think I don't want to get it wrong, but she it was something that she stuck to the longest, or the exercise part, and she felt better for it. Maybe you could share that. Like just
Yes.
how you've impacted lives in the community, and just sharing your passion and what you love, and just being your authentic self and showing up and having a safe place for others to come.
Yes. Yes. I had an idea of what I wanted to be able to do with this yoga studio, and what I did do with it really surpassed my expectations. And the people I reached out to, the clients I reached out to that came to me, that were drawn to my studio, I learned as much from them as I was able to teach them about yoga. Uh, a lot of women who are older, and I offered, what I found was chair yoga was really my most popular class, just that opportunity to move and also be in a safe place. And the safe, that space I created, it was so sacred. It really was. That wasn't necessarily like a priority in my mind. It was always in the back of my mind. I wanted a really nice space. Actually, where we're sitting here now is kind of a recreation of that. But um, just people came, women came, and some men too, and they were just able to just drop all their worries at the door and practice yoga in all the senses, not just the physical sense of it. I did have a client that came, and she struggled with lots of different things, mental illness, and she said that that was the most she was able to stick to a program. I had women in their 70s coming and practicing, and just for that movement, for that flexibility, for that opportunity to build strength and endurance and stretching and flexibility, the physical part of it, but also just give them energy for the rest of the day, or for the moment. It really was an amazing experience. And I do talk in past tense because
Yes.
there came a time when I did have to close the doors on that studio.
In that endeavor. How did that make you feel though, sharing, I mean, people sharing their experiences of, I know you're a teacher and you teach 20 to 30 students a year, but how did that make you feel, impacting a lot, changing somebody's life, and impacting somebody's life? I mean, that to me seems like such a wonderful gratitude of appreciation for somebody to share with you. I mean,
Yeah, I remember this question came up in my yoga teacher training about, well, how do you feel about being a container? And I was looking at the teacher, I'm like, well, what in the world do you mean by that? Like, I don't know what you mean by that. And so she kind of explained about being able to take on other people's just expressions of how they're feeling, and taking it in and just kind of holding it for them. And I was like, well, I guess that's something that I'm okay with. And I think with my experience of being a teacher, I've had practice with that. We have an amazing mother that has, I think just modeled that for us throughout our lives without us even knowing what she was modeling for us. So when it came time to do that, it felt very just like natural, I guess. I didn't feel like it was anything out of the ordinary. And so, um, you know, it was wonderful actually, just to be able to hold that kind of space for them and allow them to share whatever was on their mind, good, bad, and in between. And yeah, very rewarding.
Something that you shared in the beginning of our conversation was that you dealt with the emotion of disappointment with the school board and the district with the pay. And you had to deal with that emotion of disappointment. Um, do you think that your experience from the yoga studio has helped you shift and evolve as a teacher or a human in regards to navigating boundaries and different emotions? And like you said, your yoga instructor asked if you were willing to be a container for others. I don't know if that just kind of in this conversation kind of correlated for me as far as like what you've learned from your yoga students. I don't know. That just does that.
Well, the thought that comes to mind is it depends on the day. But I do
How much wine you need at the end of the day.
yes. Even today, I face that and I'm like, I could have handled that differently. But you know what I need to do? I just need to sit with that emotion and let me feel it, let me acknowledge it and say, okay, you're there, and then move on with my day. And so yes, it has. However, it doesn't mean that I'm perfect.
No,
It means
of course
that
not.
I still am not going. Sometimes I'm going to react versus respond in situations, and that's what like in today's I'm like, oh, I reacted to that, I didn't respond to that. So okay, oh well, I'll have another opportunity to
But
do better next time.
yes, and having that awareness, I think, is huge because some people don't have that awareness. I know I haven't in the past, and I'm learning that awareness in my season of life. And yeah, I think not guilting yourself and just having the courage to move on versus sitting there and sitting with a grudge against yourself or not giving yourself the grace. I think that's a huge practice in itself on a daily basis.
Yes.
And we're all humans. So.
And that's the yoga off the mat, that I certainly enjoy the physical practice of it. However, I think the yoga off the mat, all the stuff that happens in your day-to-day, moment-to-moment life and how you do process it is just yoga really gives me the strength to accept those things that come my way that I don't foresee. And okay, even when we're not perfect with the way we handle them.
Absolutely. Maybe if you wouldn't mind sharing, because that was what your biggest fear was when opening up your yoga studio, was the fear of failure. Maybe you can share. I mean, I know Heinz, what, looking back, I know the story, but maybe you could share, what the end result was of that. What made you decide that it wasn't a failure after all, shutting the doors. And I'll let you speak for yourself, not have me share. But yeah, maybe you can kind of elaborate on that.
Yeah. So after the first year, I earned my units. I went back to teaching, and going back to teaching after having that year off definitely reinvigorated me. And I remember having moments of this is where I'm meant to be. And like those moments are so just like soul filling. It's just amazing. And so to have that thought, to have that like awareness, I'm meant to be in the classroom, even though it's hard and even though, it's some days I just don't even know. I can look back and know that's where I'm meant to be. And I've put enough time and hours teaching and learning to be a better teacher. And I'm always learning to be a better teacher. I was recently at a math conference learning different ways to reach students and help them. And that's, I definitely have the passion for that. But I did try to balance teaching yoga and being a full-time teacher and volleyball coach and mom and all those other things that I was talking about. And toward the end, I realized like, okay, this is another thing pulling me in a direction, even though I love it, even though I know I'm reaching out to these women and the space there, that was one of the hardest things to give up. Um, I wrestled with it, like closing the yoga studio, but I also knew it was time. It was time, and there were moments before where I kept on thinking, okay, third eye, tell me, show me what I'm supposed to do. I would try so hard to get that message, and it wasn't the message I wanted to hear, so I wouldn't hear it. And then when it came time, I was just like, oh, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. It's just amazing how those things just show themselves to you. And
Absolutely.
when you want to hear it, when you want to know the answer, it's not going to always show up for you, but it will, and you'll know, and then you do what you have to do. So, but now looking back, I have learned so much about myself. I can think about, well, what could have I done differently to help that studio succeed? And I know one of my downfalls is marketing. That's not my forte. That's not even where I want to spend my energy. But I know that about myself now. I tried. I took marketing classes, and it just like, nope,
Yeah.
that's not me. And so just learning those things about yourself are a win.
Absolutely. You wouldn't have known if you didn't try.
No, I wouldn't have, and really did try with my best effort, not be like, check that box. But I was passionate about that. I wanted it to succeed, and it's still there. Yana Yoga, it's still there. Maybe the physical studio isn't, but it's still there. And I think it's going to make a comeback one of these days in a way that I don't even expect it to. So I just look forward to that.
I think that's beautiful, and I can't wait for it too, because I know I personally had the opportunity to take a few of your classes, and the same thing that you expressed with your clients, just leaving everything at the door. We live in such a fast-paced environment, and to just shut down your mind for an hour, to heal your body and treat your body with some good stretches and silence, because we're attached to our phones, we're attached to internet and all the things. So I think the space that you offered other people to come to is such a beautiful thing. And I don't see it as a failure. See so many moments of courage in your story. And I, as your younger sister, look up to you in many ways, and your wisdom, and just your calmness of your approach to life. And like you said, you're human. You sometimes react versus respond. And but like you said, you close the physical space of your yoga studio down, but it's still inside you. It's still it's still it's still here. It's still the being. So I think, to wrap up, I think you kind of shared a few of these things, but hindsight 2020, what would you have told yourself? I'm going to start maybe with not asking at all for a leave of absence, because I think that's where the courage rooted from. But if you wanted to interject anything else, what would you have told your old self before stepping into that season of courage, knowing what you know now?
Oh, yeah, I wrestled with this question a little bit. I, I learned so much. And so, um, just kind of keep your eyes open for all the things that are coming your way that you aren't expecting to. And I know you and I have had a lot of conversations about expectations. And so I think sometimes when we have these expectations, we put these blinders on. And so we don't allow these other gifts that are like just all around us to truly be treasured. And so I think that would be one thing that I would tell myself. The other thing I thought of is that, I had this business and I wanted it to succeed, and coming back to my just like kind of this grasp on commitment that I have. Like, so when, I had hours and I was faithfully there, and only, a few circumstances when I couldn't be there. But I think I may have told myself, be a little bit more flexible. If you want to shut those doors down for a little while and go take a trip and have a good adventure, do it. Because you know what?
The opportunity is not always going to be there.
It's not always going to be there. And I live in, as a teacher, a pretty rigid world as far as, when school's in session and the bell kind of dictates my day. So, it's just, take more advantage of that freedom that
Live
I
your
had.
life.
Yes.
And something after, just to wrap up what you shared, and as you were saying, the things so graciously that you were saying is, what if you wouldn't have asked? Where would you be with you when you said you came back to teaching after your year of absence? You knew this is where you needed to be. Could you only imagine where your mindset would be if you wouldn't have honored yourself in that way of asking for that leave of absence and sticking it out and navigating the post-COVID teaching? I mean, just where you would be mindset wise, and just how much it served you and how much you grew as a person. I just think is such a beautiful thing. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah.
And if you have anything to add to that,
yes. I mean, I love this community I teach in, and I'm so glad to be back at my school. However, it's like, I just think about how our lives can shift from like one decision to another. So I think I probably would have pursued maybe a teaching career in a different area, or maybe asked really nicely to come back. And I think it would have led me back to teaching in one way or another. But it is like the opportunities that are all around us. So just being willing to take those risks is always the scary part.
Yeah. Well, and you did it tenfold, 10 times over. So
Yes.
thank you for sharing your story, and just a snippet of your story. I know there's so many other wonderful stories of courage that you have, and yeah, maybe for another time we can dive into one of those other ones.
Yes.
So if you'd like to share with our listeners how they can find you and connect with you, if they'd love to reach out, and if they have a story they'd love to resonate with you or share with you, or just follow you.
Okay, well, marketing's not my strong suit. I'm not really out there on a lot of socials. I mean, Facebook, Heather Clark, but otherwise my handle is Clark Expedition, and Instagram, and different things. You can search that up, see if you can find me there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, and I'm honored to have you as an in-person guest. And I love you so much.
I love you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me and listening to the Kindred Journey podcast. If this episode resonated with you, please consider taking the time to rate and review the podcast, and share this episode with family and friends who you think might enjoy it. Your positive feedback helps me reach more courageous women like you. This is my passion project, so without you, I wouldn't be here doing this, and I deeply appreciate your support. Until next time.